Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you is the truth. Most people run from their entire lives. Your mind is the one battlefield the world hopes you never learn to control. Not because people want you strong, but because a disciplined mind cannot be manipulated, redirected, or broken. And a person who cannot be controlled becomes dangerous to every system built on weakness. From the moment you were young, the world taught you to react, not to think, to move fast, not to move wisely, to chase approval, not mastery. And the more reactive you became, the easier you were to predict, the easier you were to influence, the easier you were to use. I learned this watching someone I once knew, the kind who tried to stay positive no matter how much life pushed them. They wanted everyone happy, everyone calm, everyone satisfied. But deep down they were a storm they never learned to command. Their emotions led them. Their impulses spoke for them. Their reactions betrayed them. And every time pressure appeared, they cracked in the same places. One day, after yet another moment of collapse, they vanished into silence. No explanation, no noise, no distraction. They disappeared into themselves. Weeks passed. When they came back, they weren't the same. The softness was there, but the fragility wasn't. Their eyes were quiet, their voice was steady, their presence felt contained, intentional, unshakable. They said only one thing: I finally stopped being a slave to my own mind. That sentence changed everything. Because discipline isn't about controlling the world. It's about controlling yourself so fully that the world no longer gets access to your weakness. Machiavelli understood this. The Stoics lived by it. Power doesn't begin with dominance. It begins with internal order. Self-mastery is not glamorous. It's not loud. It won't give you applause. It happens in silence, in the moments where nobody sees you resisting the impulses that once owned you. It happens when you choose restraint over reaction, clarity over chaos, purpose over emotion. And today, I'm going to give you the exact transformations that turn a scattered mind into a strategic weapon, the kind of mental discipline that makes you unpredictable, unmanipulable, and unshakably centered. But before we continue, anchor this truth in your identity. I command my mind. Say it once, and your thoughts will hear you. Say it daily, and your nature will obey you. Because this series is not for the undisciplined. It's not for the ones who break at the first sign of pressure. It's for the ones ready to build a mind that cannot be hijacked. A mind that thinks clearly when others panic, moves intentionally when others chase noise, and stays aligned even when the world tries to pull it apart. Most people believe discipline is about routines, waking up early, working harder, staying consistent. But all of that is surface level. True discipline begins long before any action. It begins in the unseen place, where your thoughts form, where impulses rise, where emotions try to hijack your decisions. Internal discipline is the foundation that every external success stands on. Without it, everything else collapses under pressure. You've seen this in people around you. They start something strong, motivated, ready to change their life. And then one moment of discomfort destroys their progress. One emotion becomes an excuse. One setback becomes a full collapse. They want discipline, but they never build the mind that discipline requires. I knew someone like this, a person with ambition, talent, potential. They talked about goals every day. They dreamed big. They visualized success. But the moment things got painful, they ran. The moment things got boring, they quit. The moment someone doubted them, they doubted themselves. Their mind had no order, no hierarchy, no command. They lived in reaction mode. Then one day, they changed their entire life with a single realization. If I can't control myself, I'll always be controlled by everything else. And that truth is brutal but necessary. If you cannot control your focus, the world will hijack it. If you cannot control your emotions, people will provoke them. If you cannot control your impulses will sabotage you. If you cannot control your narrative, someone else will write it for you. Internal command begins with one skill: observation without reaction. Most people feel something and instantly obey it. Discomfort appears. They escape. Fear appears. They freeze. Temptation appears. They fold. Pressure appears. But the disciplined mind watches before it moves. It does not obey the first feeling. It creates a gap between emotion and action, between impulse and decision. That gap is where power grows. That gap is where strategy lives. Machiavelli understood this. He believed the strongest individuals were the ones who could remain steady when emotions demanded chaos. The Stoics lived by the same law. You do not control the world, but you control the meaning you assign to it and the reaction you choose afterward. Internal command requires practice. It requires sitting with discomfort instead of fleeing from it. It requires waiting when your impulses tell you to rush. It requires thinking when your emotions demand a reaction. Every time you hold the line, your mind sharpens. Every time you refuse to break, your inner authority strengthens. The world cannot manipulate a person who has mastered themselves. No insult can shake them. No distraction can pull them. No pressure can crack them. This is the discipline that creates leaders, warriors, strategists. The kind of people who shape their environment instead of being shaped by it. Your emotions are not the problem. Your relationship with them is. Most people spend their entire lives being pulled, provoked, and manipulated not because the world is powerful, but because their own emotional triggers remain unexamined. A single comment ruins their day. A small rejection crushes their confidence. A moment of pressure breaks their focus. And every time this happens, they lose control not to the situation, but to themselves. To master your mind, you must become the kind of person who can feel everything, yet remain owned by nothing. But to reach that level, you must first understand the truth behind emotional triggers. They are old wounds masquerading as reactions. I once knew someone who reacted explosively whenever they felt dismissed. Even the smallest tone shift would send them into overthinking, anger, or panic. At first, they believed people were disrespectful, but eventually they learned the deeper truth. Their trigger wasn't created by the world. It was created by years of feeling unheard. The world simply pressed a button that already existed inside them. That realization is where power begins. Because once you understand the root of your triggers, they stop owning you. They stop directing your behavior. They stop deciding your reactions. Emotional triggers are not meant to be suppressed. They are meant to be traced. When you feel something sharp inside you, don't run from it. Study it. Ask yourself, why does this moment affect me so deeply? What wound is this reaction protecting? Who taught me to feel this way? What belief is sitting underneath this pain? This is not weakness. This is strategy. Machiavelli taught that the one who understands human nature, especially their own, becomes almost impossible to manipulate. The Stoics taught that emotion is not the enemy. Misinterpretation is. When you analyze your triggers instead of acting on them, something powerful happens. Your reactions slow. Your clarity sharpens. Your emotions become information, not commands. Instead of exploding, you observe. Instead of collapsing, you center yourself. Instead of reacting instantly, you respond with intention. And soon, the very triggers that once controlled you become the tools that guide you. Anger becomes a signal of violated boundaries. Fear becomes a map pointing toward growth. Jealousy reveals desire. Insecurity exposes the areas you must strengthen. Anxiety shows you where your preparation is lacking. Nothing stays emotional. Everything becomes data. This is the transformation most people avoid because it requires honesty. It requires confronting versions of yourself you've ignored for years. But understand this. What you refuse to examine will continue to control you. When you detach from the emotional story and see only the pattern, you become unshakable. People lose their power to provoke you. Situations lose their ability to blindside you. Pressure loses the ability to break you. Chaos exposes people. Pressure reveals who is truly in control. Most individuals can think clearly when life is comfortable. They appear confident, stable, and balanced until something unexpected hits. One setback, one disappointment, one moment of uncertainty, and their entire composure shatters. Not because the chaos is too powerful, but because their mind was never trained to remain calm inside it. If you want to build true strategic self, you must develop a skill most people never even attempt. The ability to stay centered when the world around you fractures. This is not about pretending nothing affects you. It's about building an internal stillness so strong that no external storm can hijack your clarity. I once watched this transformation happen in someone close to me. They used to break down the moment things got unpredictable. When life didn't follow their plan, they spiraled. When people disappointed them, they panicked. When challenges appeared suddenly, they froze and made desperate decisions. But something changed after a difficult moment, a moment that forced them to confront the truth. If I can't stay calm under pressure, I will always be controlled by pressure. From that day, they trained their composure the same way a warrior trains skill. Slowly, deliberately, ruthlessly. And over time, the reactions that once shook them became powerless. They didn't stop feeling, they stopped crumbling. Here's what they learned, and what you must learn too. Chaos is not your enemy. Johur panikis. Chaos simply reveals where your discipline ends. When pressure rises, you must shift into observation mode. Instead of reacting, you witness. Instead of assuming, you analyze. Instead of collapsing inward, you expand upward. Instead of letting fear run wild, you give it no seat at the table. This is the Stoic mindset. This is strategic composer. This is Machiavellian.com. The kind that intimidates manipulators and disarms chaos itself. Understand this. People who can stay calm under pressure are perceived as powerful, even when they say nothing. Others feel Italiano. It unsettles them, because most people expect panic, noise, and emotional outbursts. When you give none of that, they lose their ability to predict you. Your calm becomes a psychological shield. Your silence becomes a strategic weapon. Your steadiness becomes influence. And here's the secret most never learn. Calm is not natural. It is trained. It's built every time you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Every time you breathe through the urge to react. Every time you refuse to let emotion dictate your next move. This is why your calm must be forged in small moments. The daily frustrations, the minor delays, the conversations that test your patience. These are training grounds. Each moment you control yourself, you build depth. Each time you stay centered, you thicken your armor. And eventually, you reach a point where chaos no longer owns you. You own yourself within it. Stay with me. To master your mind, you must learn one of the rarest psychological skills in existence. Strategic detachment, not emotional numbness, not isolation, not coldness. Strategic detachment means keeping your inner world untouched, even when the outer world tries to pull you into chaos, expectations, and emotional traps. Most people are not suffering because life is cruel. They suffer because they are overattached to things they cannot control. They attach their peace to people, their confidence to approval, their identity to outcomes, their happiness to stability. And when any of those things shift, even slightly, their entire sense of self collapses. I knew someone who struggled with this deeply. Whenever someone's mood changed, their mood changed. When someone pulled away, they panicked. When plans shifted unexpectedly, their entire emotional state was shaken. They were constantly adjusting themselves to fit what others wanted, constantly losing themselves in the process. But everything changed when they finally realized the truth. I can't control anything that isn't mine, so why am I trying to live from the outside in? That moment became the beginning of their psychological freedom. Strategic detachment means you stop fighting reality. You stop chasing certainty. You stop clinging to outcomes. You stop giving the world the power to decide your emotional state. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop collapsing. Here's what detachment actually looks like in practice. You care, but you don't cling. You love, but you don't beg. You give, but you don't drain yourself. You commit, but you don't dissolve your identity. You desire, but you don't depend. You feel, but you don't fold. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He believed that the person who cannot separate their emotions from their decisions will always be predictable, always be manipulable, always be controlled. The Stoics lived the same wisdom. Control begins with knowing what is yours and what is not. When you detach strategically, you create inner distance, enough space between you and the situation to think clearly. That distance is power. That distance is protection. That distance lets you observe instead of react, respond instead of explode, choose instead of obey. Most people lose themselves in relationships because they tie their worth to someone else's attention. Most people lose themselves in goals because they tie their identity to the result. Most people lose themselves in setbacks because they tie their peace to perfect outcomes. Detachment breaks these chains, not by making you emotionless, but by making you sovereign. Because the person who can walk away calmly, who can remain steady when others expect panic, who can stay centered when outcomes shift, that person becomes someone the world cannot control. Their presence becomes heavier, their mind sharper, their actions cleaner, their confidence quieter, but stronger. This is the power of inner distance. This is the edge of the strategist. If strategic detachment protects your emotions, boundaries protect your energy. And without boundaries, even the strongest mind eventually collapses. Not from weakness, but from constant leaks. Most people don't fail because they lack strength. They fail because they waste that strength on the wrong people, the wrong environments, and the wrong obligations. A life without boundaries is like a fortress without walls. Easy to enter, easy to exploit, easy to drain. I knew someone who lived this way. They were capable, disciplined, and deeply loyal. But they had no lines, no limits, no structure protecting their inner space. Anyone could call them. Anyone could interrupt them. Anyone could demand their time, their energy, their attention. And because they didn't want to disappoint others, they said yes to everything. But life taught them a brutal truth. When you don't set boundaries, people don't thank you. They depend on you. And dependency becomes expectation. Expectation becomes entitlement. Entitlement becomes disrespect. The moment they realized this, everything changed. Boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are clarity. They tell the world, this is where I end, and you begin. Here's what boundaries actually do for you. They protect your focus from distractions. They protect your time from freeloaders. They protect your mind from manipulators. They protect your emotions from instability. They protect your purpose from dilution. Machiavelli understood this principle well. He believed a leader must be predictable in their values, but not accessible in their energy. When people can access you at any moment, they begin to treat you casually. When people believe you will tolerate anything, they offer you nothing. Boundaries are your declaration that you respect yourself and that anyone who wants to stay in your life must respect you too. A boundary is not a wall around your heart. It is a door with a lock, one you control. This means you decide who enters your life. You decide who stays. You decide who gets distance. You decide who gets silence. You decide who has earned your effort. And here's the part most people never understand. People respect the person who respects themselves. When you enforce boundaries, yes, some people will leave, but only the ones who benefited from your lack of them. The people meant for your life won't be threatened. They'll be aligned. A person with boundaries becomes unpredictable to manipulators, undesirable to users, and unshakable to the world. Your peace becomes a fortress. Your presence gains value. Your time becomes rare. Your identity becomes solid. This is how boundaries transform your life. They filter your environment without you lifting a finger. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not absence. Silence is strategy. Most people talk because they feel uncomfortable with quiet. They reveal their fears, their plans, their insecurities, and their intentions without realizing they are handing the world the exact tools needed to control them. But the disciplined mind learns a different truth. Your silence is leverage. I once knew someone who used to over-explain everything. Every decision, every emotion, every goal came with long justifications. They thought transparency would protect them. Instead, it exposed them. People learned how to provoke them, how to manipulate their reactions, how to extract information, how to push their buttons. Then one day, they decided to stop talking, not out of anger, but out of strategy. They began speaking less, listening more, observing everything, and something powerful happened. Their presence grew louder, the quieter they became. Silence does this. It makes people wonder. It makes people think twice. It makes people reveal themselves. When someone cannot hastily read you, they lose their ability to predict you. When they cannot predict you, they cannot control you. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He believed that unpredictability protects power, that the person who reveals little becomes impossible to manipulate. The Stoics taught that the more you control what you say, the more you control how you are perceived. Strategic silence is not about shutting down. It's about choosing when to speak, why to speak, and how much to reveal. Here's what silence gives you. Information. People fill silence with their truth. Authority. Those who speak less appear more confident. Mystery. What is unclear becomes intriguing. Protection. You cannot be attacked for what you never said. Time. Silence gives your mind space to calculate, and in moments of conflict, silence is dominance. People expect explosions, reactions, explanations. But when you remain calm and quiet, they feel the imbalance. They feel your control. They feel their own emotional chaos growing louder while yours stays still. Silence disarms manipulators. It frustrates liars. It exposes the insecure. It forces truth to surface. Most important, silence keeps your power inside you instead of leaking into the world. You don't tell people your plans. You show them your results. You don't argue with fools. You let their own words reveal their nature. You don't give emotional reactors the satisfaction of pulling you into their drama. You let silence suffocate their attempts. Strategic silence is presence. It is control. It is the art of speaking only when the impact is intentional. When you master silence, you no longer speak to be understood. You speak to influence. And the fewer words you use, the sharper they cut. To become mentally untouchable is not to become emotionless, cold, or distant. It is to become centered, so deeply grounded in your own mind that nothing external can hijack your clarity, your direction, or your identity. Most people live at the mercy of the world. Their mood is dictated by other people's behavior. Their confidence is shaped by external approval. Their decisions are influenced by fear, insecurity, or pressure. And because of this, they are easy to manipulate, easy to provoke, and easy to break. But the mind you are building through these transformations does not move under pressure. It shapes pressure. It does not react to the world, it guides the world's reaction to you. Becoming mentally untouchable begins with a shift in identity. You stop being led by life and start leading yourself through life. I once knew someone who used to shatter at the smallest emotional disruption. A rude comment would ruin their day. An unexpected setback would make them lose all motivation. Someone pulling away would make them question their worth. Their entire emotional state depended on things they could not control. And because of that, the world had full access to their peace. But everything changed when they finally accepted a truth most people avoid. I can't control what happens, but I can control how deeply it touches me. This realization marks the beginning of mental sovereignty. To become untouchable, you must master 3 psychological territories. 1. Emotional distance. Not detachment from life, but detachment from emotional pressure. You feel, but you do not fold. You care, but you do not cling. You experience emotions, but you do not allow them to dictate your direction. Emotion becomes information, not identity. This alone separates you from the reactive mass. 2. Intellectual clarity. You learn to see situations for what they are, not what your fear imagines. You stop creating stories in your head. You stop interpreting everything personally. You stop assuming intentions without evidence. The clearer you're thinking, the harder it becomes for chaos to influence you. 3. Identity anchoring. You know who you are, not because someone told you, but because you chose it. When you anchor your identity internally, nothing external can shake it. Insults don't touch you. Rejection doesn't break you. Loss doesn't erase you. Uncertainty doesn't define you. This is the final evolution of discipline. Machiavelli understood that psychological stability is the deepest form of power. The Stoics lived by it. The idea that freedom is found not in controlling the world, but in controlling your response to it. The mentally untouchable person does not need to prove themselves, defend themselves, or react to every disturbance. Their silence carries weight. Their presence carries authority. Their choices are rooted in intention, not emotion. When people realize they cannot shake you, they begin respecting you. When life sees you cannot be broken, it stops breaking you in the same places. When your mind becomes your strongest ally, you become unstoppable. This is not the end of your evolution. It is the foundation. Because once you become untouchable internally, everything external begins to align with the strength you carry within. Reaching the level of being mentally untouchable is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning of your ascension. This is the stage where all your inner work begins to translate into external influence. Not through force, not through noise, not through proving yourself, but through the silent authority of someone who has mastered their inner world so completely that the outer world adjusts to them naturally. This stage is where you transition from simply surviving life to architecting it. Most people drift. They react. They adapt only when the world pressures them. They wait for circumstances to dictate what comes next. But the strategist, the one you are becoming, moves with intention. You no longer operate out of habit or fear. You operate out of clarity, out of principle, out of strategy. I once watched someone reach this level without even realizing it. They begin by controlling their reactions, then their focus, then their emotions, then their boundaries. Eventually, their entire presence changed. They no longer sought approval. They no longer chased people. They no longer tried to fit into rooms that diminished them. They no longer apologized for choosing themselves. Instead, they walked into situations with calm certainty. They spoke less, but with more weight. They made decisions without hesitation. They moved away from chaos without explanation. People noticed the change not because it was loud, but because it was undeniable. Some grew intimidated. Some grew curious. Some grew respectful, but no one ignored it. That's what ascension is. You stop asking for space and start becoming the space itself. This stage requires 3 final upgrades. 1. Strategic identity. You stop being who the world conditioned you to be and start becoming who you intentionally decide to be. You craft your habits, your behavior, your mindset, and your environment to match the person you envision, not the person your past created. Identity becomes a choice, not an accident. 2. Long game thinking. Reactivity dies here. Short-term emotion no longer controls your long-term movement. You begin to see life like a chessboard. Some moves are immediate. Some moves require patience. Some moves require sacrifice. Some moves require silence. You no longer rush to win the moment, to aim to win the entire game. 3. Presence over performance. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to be seen to know your value. Your presence speaks long before your words do. People feel your discipline, your calm, your depth. You influence simply by existing with intention. This is the point where your mind stops being shaped by the world and starts shaping the world around you. Not by domination, but by alignment. Not by fear, but by clarity. Not by force, but by self-mastery. Carl Jung once said that a person does not become enlightened by imagining ideals, but by confronting and mastering their inner darkness. Ascension is the result of that mastery, a quiet, unshakable authority that cannot be faked and cannot be stolen. This is who you're becoming. A strategist, a sovereign mind, a disciplined force, someone who leads themselves first and, in doing so, leads everything they touch. Your ascension is not loud. It is precise, deliberate, inevitable. And now, you rise.